this is Elise, and you're watching Crash Course Honors English. And today we are going to talk about Things Fall Apart. And no, that is not the name of a book about the average high schooler's life. This book is about a man named Okonkwo who struggles with the cultural changes presented in society by the greedy Brits, who think they're just way better than everyone else. I'm telling you, the Brits are taking over. First in small villages, and now in your favorite Hollywood movies. Can you believe it? I'm looking at you, Tom Holland. Well, how can I not look at you? You're just so handsome and amazing. Okay, I'm getting too distracted here. We will also be examining What Dreams May Come, a movie about a man named Chris who loses his wife, his life, and his children, and has to reevaluate the meaning of life. Man, that sounds depressing now that I say it out loud. Let's just move on to the title intro thing that everyone likes. The author of Things Fall Apart, Chinua Achebe, was born November 16, 1930, in Ojidi, Nigeria, in Igbo town. This Nigerian novelist is known for the unsentimental depictions of social and psychological disorientation accompanying the imposition of Western customs and values upon traditional African society. His novels range in subject matter from the first contact of an African village with the white man to the educated African's attempt to create a firm moral order out of changing values in a large city. Things Fall Apart is set in 1890 during the early days of colonialism in Nigeria. Achebe depicts Igbo society in transition from its first contact with British colonialists to the growing dominance of British rule over the indigenous people. The story starts with Okonkwo in an Igbo village near the Niger River. He was one of the best wrestlers around in the village, and he probably had to wear one of those ridiculous spandex outfits that most wrestlers have to wear. He admired and respected the traditional ways of Igbo life, but he also had many internal issues, including his inability to express his emotions and an overwhelming fear of tainting his reputation. Achebe writes, perhaps down in his heart, Okonkwo was not a cruel man, but his whole life was dominated by fear, the fear of failure and weakness. It was not external, but lay deep within himself. It was the fear of himself, lest he should be found to resemble his father. This fear is not like my fear of heights, or my fear of photos of microscopic bugs. This fear has developed since he was younger. And here in this quote, we are given the reason why Okonkwo is so harsh to his family. It comes from a fear of being weak. It comes from a fear of failure. Okonkwo's father was an effeminate man who cared only for music. But hey, you can't blame the guy for liking music. That's like blaming me for liking to eat food. It's essential for happiness. Moving on, his dad never accomplished anything in his life, which is why Okonkwo was so afraid of becoming just like him. And one day, the oracle professed that Akimafuna, Okonkwo's adopted son, had to be killed. Okonkwo led his son into the forest with some clansmen, and even when warned not to, Okonkwo still took part in the killing of his own son, because he was afraid of, quote, being thought weak. And I almost cried when I read this part of the book because it was just so sad, and it really isn't okay. He then killed one of the clansmen on accident, and due to this crime, which is referred to as a feminine crime, which is ironic since Okonkwo thought he was all manly and stuff, but after this, he was exiled for 7 years, and when he returned to Umuofia, things were no longer the same. This is when things fell apart. See what I did there? I know you did. British colonizers showed up, and they knocked on the Igbo people's door and said, hey, your God is wrong, and your life is wrong. You should be a Christian. But honestly, can't the British just be like the Beatles and let it be? They restructured Igbo society by adding schools and hospitals that people now depended on. Noye and Okonkwo's relationship was ruined after Akimafuna's death because he was the one that actually brought them together. Now, let's go to the thought bubble to take a further look into Noye and Okonkwo's relationship. Throughout Noye's life, he felt pressured to be the strong and ideal man that his father wanted him to be. The introduction of Christianity was a catalyst for Noye to realize that he didn't have to follow his father's beliefs. And because Christianity was so different and accepted everyone, he decided to flee the coop and join them. Okonkwo wanted to grab him by the neck and choke him out, which he actually did. He actually grabbed him by the neck and choked him out. You know, in teen movies, when a parent forces a teenager to do something, and in the end the teenager just runs away from the parent because they suck and they shouldn't tell them what to do or whatever, hormones. Geez, Okonkwo, you clearly need to watch more rebellious teenage movies. Okonkwo has had enough of these ashy buttocks British colonizers and say, quote, "The white man is very clever. He came quietly and peacefully with his religion. We were amused at his foolishness and allowed him to stay. Now he has won over our brothers and our clan and can no longer act like one. He has put a knife on the things that has held us together." Over time, the number of converts increased in the clan, and the hostility between the Christians and the traditional Igbos became intense, to the point where the Igbo people thought, "Hey, you know what would be a sensible idea? Let's burn the church to the ground." Now, the cultural divide grows even more, and because of this, Okonkwo goes straight to the British government to bring back the old ways. It turned out this was merely a trap just to get Okonkwo in jail. Not only did they trap Okonkwo, but they also jailed all the elders that came along with him. Okonkwo lost his hope and is unable to adapt to the new ways of life. And spoiler alert, he took his own life. An obvious theme in this story is the struggle between change and tradition, and we can clearly see that Okonkwo proudly stands with his cultural beliefs. And a main reason for this is his status and his self-worth, which is dependent on these standing customs. Conflict between him and Noye makes it apparent that although change might not be what you want, it is inevitable. Another prominent theme in this story is the ideals of masculinity. Okonkwo thinks he is some manly man with extra manliness on the side, but according to Igbo standards, to be manly, you must be strong, emotionless, and able to provide. Because of these standards that Okonkwo has lived by, it has gotten in the way of him building stable relationships with his friends and family. He never expressed his love and joy for his family, and there are very rare moments when he would allow himself to care for his family and show that he cared. For instance, when Azima was taken by Chelo the priestess, Ekwefe and Okonkwo spent all night looking for her. He circled around the whole village 5 times to make sure that Ekwefe returned to their hut and rested. Most of the time, his emotions were anger and frustration towards his wife and his children. He often beat them when they made mistakes, and he was convinced he did it out of love. But it wasn't only his family. He acted similarly around everyone he knew. Since masculinity revolved around the people around you, Okonkwo was always trying to outdo the other men and made them feel inferior to him, like the egomaniac he is. Now let's break down what dreams may come. Richard Matheson was born in Ellendale, New Jersey, to Norwegian immigrants Bertolf and Fanny Matheson. His early writing influences were the film Dracula, novels by Kenneth Roberts, and a poem which he read in the newspaper Brooklyn Eagle. Most of his novels were horror-based science fantasies, and who doesn't like a bit of a scare? Boo! Haha, I definitely got you. Perhaps his love for horror stories sparked his interest in the afterlife. Matheson published a novel, What Dreams May Come, in September of 1978. There was a movie version released in 1998, which is what we're analyzing today. Robin Williams plays the main character, Chris. My heart goes out to you, Robin Williams. We love you. The story starts off with Chris Nielsen, who meets Anne, the love of his life, on a small boat. They end up getting married and have 2 kids who end up in a fatal car accident. The relationship crumbles as they grieve the loss of their children, and the situation forces them to re-examine their relationship and figure out what the other person truly needs during this time of vulnerability. Chris learns that Anne needed a person to experience the grief with rather than to lean on someone who is unaffected. Chris Nielsen dies in a car accident after going to the movies one night. I hope his last movie was good. You know what? Everyone should get to watch a movie before they die. I would watch Shrek 2, Guardians of the Galaxy, or White Chicks. Before Chris transitions into the afterlife, he tries his best to console Anne in spirit, but because of her mourning, she interprets his messages incorrectly, and Anne is overwhelmed by guilt and despair, which leads her to take her own life. Chris realizes he is doing more harm than good to Anne by staying in the physical world, so he decides to fully transition into the afterlife. When he arrives in the afterlife, which is just one big giant painting, he is accompanied by Albert, who acts as his guide around the Summerland. Although he was in a place where bliss is granted, he was unable to enjoy his stay because living without Anne and his children was a hell. Once he settled into the Summerland, Albert informs him that Anne has just taken her own life. Chris was determined to rid Anne of her guilt that kept her trapped in hell, and so he embarked on a wonderful journey across he went to hell. Do you think that'd be wonderful whatsoever? It was terrible. He had a terrible time there. There was a bunch of lost souls trying to grab up on him and trying to get into his boat. He had to step on people's faces to cross some sort of bridge. It was bad. In order to find Anne through the mass of souls, he had to relive core memories which the little emotions in his head from inside out provided for him, to figure out how to overcome her blinding guilt. And when I say blinding, I mean she did not recognize him at all. Which reminds me, it's time for the open letter. Flourish. Let's see what's in the secret compartment today. Would you look at that? It's a letter from the depths of hell, from the souls, to Chris Nielsen. Hey, I tried to get on your boat and you just pushed me away. What the heck, man? I thought you were cool. Also, I heard you stepped on my friend Jeff's face to cross over hell. That's a bit of a jerk move. You're not invited to the hell party next Saturday. That wasn't what I was expecting. Also, what does a hell party look like? Should I ask if I'm invited? Best wishes, Elise. Right, now back to the story. Chris talks about the memories they shared, but it ends up making her feel worse about the whole situation. And Chris says, sometimes when you win, you lose. Meaning that even though he made it to the afterlife and found Anne, he loses because he doesn't have his family, and he and Anne got trapped in their own hell. Chris realizes that Anne is so consumed in her own hell that all of her mistakes and bringing back old memories was not going to help. Chris decides that if he can't save them, join them. So he joins Anne in their own hell. This ultimate sacrifice touches Anne's heart, and she recognizes that Chris is the only person that would do that for her, because Chris is a good guy. We all needed Chris in our life. She is able to escape her guilt through some miracle, thus leaving hell. The couple return to the Summerland and discover that the guides that accompanied Chris were actually his children, disguised as people he admired and respected. The family unites in the Summerland, living all together once again. At the very end, Chris and Anne decide to start the journey all over again by reincarnating back to Earth. A theme in this movie is perception versus reality. Like, sadly, I have to understand the reality that I can't marry Tom Holland. And we develop our own perception and ideas of a person. But we have to take a step back to see them for who they really are and what they really need. And what dreams become when Chris and Anne's relationship almost comes to an end, Chris has to stop putting on the persona he thought Anne needed and actually ask her what she wanted. He realized the whole perception of the relationship was all wrong. And from there on, he treated people with the most kindness and made sure not to judge based on the appearance of the situation. This theme is also prominent when it came to Ian and Marie, their children, disguising themselves as people Chris respected and would listen to. Even though they were in completely different bodies, their father recognized them for who they truly are. Thought is real. Physical is the illusion. Ironic, huh? Illusion, by definition, is the false impression of something. But when it comes to relationships, physicalities don't matter. It's all about the love we share. Thanks for watching. I'll never see you again. Crash Course is made possible by these wonderful people, and Janine Gracie. Thank you for watching again and dealing with this hella long analysis. Please enjoy the rest of the presentation.